Your baby's crying is too loud. Stay there.
In the midst of a cold winter night, my husband dragged me, carrying our baby, and forced me out onto the balcony. Moreover, he locked the window from inside so that I couldn't return to the room. Ignoring my pleas as I banged on the window, he downed his whiskey in one go and went straight to bed. The cold north wind blew relentlessly into our 8th-floor apartment balcony, draining warmth from my body. At this rate, my baby will fall ill. Sensing my fear, the baby cried out even more. The more I thought about our situation, the more crushed I felt by anxiety. My name is Lisa. I'm 33 years old. I married my same-aged husband, Robert, 4 years ago, and we just had a baby boy 6 months ago. Our relationship was pretty good until I became pregnant. From about the 5th month of my pregnancy, his attitude toward me suddenly became cold. Lately, we had constant arguments and he verbally abused me whenever he had the chance. Today, too, when he returned home, he yelled at me for lying down, exhausted from childcare.
It's your duty as a wife to stay awake until I get home. Remember that I'm the one providing for you. You can't even earn a dime.
But it's past 2 in the morning. I can't stay awake that late. I couldn't endure his words anymore. But when I retaliated, our 6-month-old baby started crying and wouldn't stop no matter how much I tried to soothe him.
Stay there because it's too loud.
Suddenly, Robert shoved me, carrying the baby onto the balcony and locked the door. No matter how much I banged on the window, he wouldn't come back from the bedroom. What's worse, I only had my pajamas on and a cardigan. I didn't even have my phone to call for help, and we were on the 8th floor of our apartment building. It was impossible to get down by myself. The baby was crying even more in this situation. I can't stay out here in the cold wind forever. Worried about my baby's health more than my own, I searched for something to block the wind. I found a tarp in the storage box on the balcony, and I used it to huddle up tightly with the baby, enduring the cold. As if sensing my anxiety, the baby continued to cry, and only his voice echoed in the cold air. I decided to somehow endure until morning, when Robert would hopefully have calmed down, but the cold made my entire body shiver uncontrollably. Before I knew it, it started to drizzle, and it looked like it was going to snow soon. I started to zone out as time passed. This is not good. I need to hold myself together and stay awake. If I fall asleep now, things will take a turn for the worse. I slapped my own cheek to wake myself up, but my consciousness was slowly fading. That's when I suddenly heard a voice calling me. Lisa? Is that you? What are you doing out here at this hour? Looking around, unsure of where the sound was coming from, I noticed the partition board on the balcony, separating our apartment from the one next door, had been removed. Through the gap appeared our neighbor, Miss Miller, looking concerned. This board has been damaged and cracked from a hurricane once and hadn't been repaired since. I had a fight with my husband, and he kicked me out. He even locked the door, so I can't get back inside. What? That's terrible, especially in the middle of a winter night. Come over to my place then. It's a good thing I hadn't fixed this partition board. Miss Miller had removed all the cardboard that had been used to cover the hole. The hole was just big enough that an adult could crouch and squeeze through. Aren't we causing you trouble at this hour? I asked her. No time for that now, she said. First, pass me your baby. I trusted her with my baby, who she kindly offered to take and accepted her invitation into her home. Once inside, she gently wrapped the baby in a warm, soft blanket. To my amazement, the crying baby, who had been inconsolable until a moment ago, quieted down and soon started breathing peacefully, fast asleep. It must be warm and cozy now. Lisa, don't hesitate and get warm under the heated blanket, she said. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry for the inconvenience at this late hour, I replied. My fight with my husband had indeed started after 2 a.m., and the clock on the wall now pointed to 3:30. I had been outside on the balcony for about an hour, and my body felt chilled to the bone. My hands and feet tingled numbly. The baby seems fine. I work night shift, so I'm naturally a night owl. Stretch out your legs and make yourself comfortable, Miss Miller said. Despite her reassurances, I still felt guilty. Then I realized that my early rising mother-in-law would be waking up soon. I hastily contacted her, and she laughed, saying, Oh dear, you two had another spat, didn't you? And agreed to bring the spare key. Until my mother-in-law arrived, I spilled out everything that had been happening to me to Miss Miller. How my husband's attitude had suddenly changed after we had the baby. How he yelled at me for not being able to keep up with the housework despite being a stay-at-home mom. How he blamed me whenever the baby cried at night while he did nothing. Miss Miller listened to me intently, interjecting with sympathetic nods. I can't keep up the housework because I'm such a lousy mother. I'm always sleep deprived, I confessed. You've had a tough time. You're doing your best, she comforted me. Being constantly blamed by my husband, I had come to believe that I was the one at fault. But her words, "You're not to blame," brought me to the verge of tears. Just then, I heard a soft knock on the front door. Looking at the clock, it was nearly 4 a.m. My mother-in-law must have driven over with their spare key. Miss Miller welcomed her in, and my mother-in-law, bowing repeatedly, handed Miss Miller a bag of fresh vegetables from her garden. "I'm sorry for involving you in my son's marital squabbles," she apologized. When my mother-in-law asked for an explanation, I explained everything to her. Her face turned bright red with anger. "Who does he think puts food on the table?" she exclaimed. "Well, that's thanks to Robert," I answered. "No, I'm mad at my son. He can't even cook for himself and he can't do household chores. It's unforgivable that he looks down on a full-time housewife." Robert can't even live on his own. Plus, there's nothing you can do about a baby crying at night. When putting them out on the balcony is awful. As his mother, I am so embarrassed. I could burst into flames. Knowing my mother-in-law was on my side rather than my husband's, I sighed in relief. Then she stood up abruptly and walked off, declaring heatedly, "I'll go wake Robert and teach him a lesson." I grabbed her arm to stop her. "In about an hour, Robert will wake up anyway. I have a feeling it'll be counterproductive if we disturb his sleep," I said. My husband's grumpy when he wakes up and is extremely irritable in the morning. I was afraid that if we woke him up forcefully, he would just get angry and become even more stubborn. When I explained this to my mother-in-law, she somehow refrained from her intended course of action. "Look, it's the first snow of the season." It had become unusually quiet outside. I noticed that snow was gently starting to accumulate. Just the thought of what might have happened if the baby and I had remained on the balcony sent shivers down my spine. Soon, it was time for Robert to wake up. I left the baby with Miss Miller, and my mother-in-law and I entered our house using the spare key. However, Robert, who would usually be up brushing his teeth by now, was nowhere to be found in the bathroom. Is he still sleeping? "Robert, get up already, huh?" My mother-in-law opened the bedroom door with a loud bang and yanked back the comforter with all her might, but Robert wasn't there either. We looked everywhere, the bathroom, the bedroom, and the living area, but he was nowhere to be found. Despite this, his suit and shoes were still here, so it was hard to believe that he had already gone to work. Where could he have gone? This is strange, isn't it? "Ah!" My mother-in-law, who had casually opened the curtain leading to the balcony, screamed. When I rushed over, she was pointing at the blue tarp I had been using on the balcony, her mouth opening and closing in shock. Underneath it, I could see a glimpse of someone's foot. What could it be? As I nervously lifted the blue tarp, there was Robert, collapsed in nothing but his underwear. What? Why is he on the balcony? Could it be? My mother-in-law said she had come into this room once before going to the neighbors. At that time, she noticed that the balcony window was open, so she closed it and locked it. But I don't think Robert was here at that time. I wonder why. My mother-in-law called out, "Come on, wake up," to Robert several times, but it seemed like he had lost consciousness. To prevent his body from getting cold, we covered him with a blanket and decided to wait for the arrival of an ambulance. I need to call his workplace and tell them that he'll be taking a day off. I tried to use Robert's phone that was nearby, but it was locked and I couldn't open it. "Oh, if it's fingerprint recognition, you can do it like this." My mother-in-law grabbed Robert's hand, used his finger, and unlocked the phone in an instant. What's this? The screen of his phone was left open on iMessage, and there was a lovey-dovey exchange with his affair partner. Upon closer inspection, the recipient of the message was my friend, Serena. Tracing back their convo, it turns out their relationship began 6 months ago. Just around the same time I was entering my second trimester of pregnancy, and my husband's attitude started to grow cold. Not only that, but there were heaps of intimate photos stored in his photo gallery. I see. So that's what was going on. I can't believe they're still seeing each other. Feelings of outrage began to boil within me, and to think that the woman he's cheating on me with was my own friend. My goodness, what is this girl thinking? Let's teach her a lesson she won't forget. With that, my mother-in-law smirked and shared a secret strategy. My husband, who had been rushed to the hospital by ambulance, regained consciousness after various tests and treatments. Still, he was kept in the hospital for a few days, just in case.
"Where am I?"
As he woke up and looked around in confusion, I explained to him why he was here, and he suddenly became furious.
"I was worried that you had fallen off the balcony when I saw you were gone. I slipped and hit my head while trying to check below. The balcony window was somehow closed and it was freezing cold with the falling snow. What were you planning to do if I had died?
Considering my husband's habit of sleeping in his underwear after drinking, the mere fact that he stepped out onto the balcony naked was utterly foolish. I'm sorry you didn't make it to the other world.
You must have locked the balcony door to get back at me.
That's not true. Your mother did that. She probably locked it without realizing you were down.
Eh? My mom?
I couldn't get into the house, so I asked your mom to bring the spare key. Robert was pretty surprised to hear that his mom had come. He kept grumbling about being scolded later now that his mom knew, and how embarrassing it would be if the story spread among the relatives.
By the way, how did you manage to get off the balcony?
Miss Miller next door noticed and came to my rescue. You never even bring in the laundry, so you probably didn't know that the balcony partition was broken, did you?
What?
So when she asked why I was on the balcony in the middle of the night, I told her everything. When he realized that not only the relatives but also the neighbors knew about it, Robert's face gradually turned devilish.
You're messing with me, you stupid woman. And remember this,
he shouted at me. I then thrust his phone in front of him. You've got some nerve to be so arrogant. Of course, his phone had records of conversations with his mistress and photos of them being intimate. Robert's face, which was gasped for a moment, gradually turned pale, saying, "This is bad. It's unacceptable that you had an affair, let alone with my friend."
You're a terrible woman for snooping on someone else's phone.
When I was looking up the phone number to contact your company, your iMessage was left open.
Eh? The company?
You're taking a day off today, so it's only right to let them know. After saying that, I explained everything about why he would be taking a day off. Robert looked shocked, and then, naturally, he became extremely pale and held his head in his hands. Your boss said that's terrible. I never thought he was that kind of person. I wonder what's going to happen from here on. You might get demoted, or even fired.
If I get fired, you're going to have trouble making ends meet.
My husband, as usual, lashed out at me with his arrogant attitude. He talked as if everything was my fault. For so long, this attitude made me feel like I was the one to blame. But not anymore. It doesn't matter to me. I despise men who cheat, and above all, I can't be with someone who puts our children in danger. Let's divorce cleanly and conclusively.
No way, you're joking. You just have to listen to me,
he bellowed, assuming that his aggressive behavior would keep me submissive. It became evident that it was pointless to reason with him. I'm going to make sure you sign the divorce papers, no matter what. I also informed him that I had already contacted the husband of his mistress, who was understandably furious and on his way to the hospital, and that he'd mentioned his black belt in karate and his intention to seek more than just compensation. My husband's face drained of color, and he seemed momentarily panicked, but he quickly snapped,
I'm in the hospital. He can't harm me.
Then my mother-in-law arrived, carrying things for his stay in the hospital. Oh, you're awake, you good-for-nothing, she remarked.
It's your fault, Mom. You locked the balcony door,
he defended. You were the one who started all this by forcing Lisa and the baby out on the balcony because you were bothered by your own baby's cry, she retorted.
Well,
he murmured, momentarily subdued by his mother's scolding. But I went in for the kill. That's why I'm going to the police to report this.
What? Why?
You put me and our child in danger. Of course I'm going to report you.
There's no need to go that far. It was just a marital spat. Nothing serious.
Getting a divorce and going to the police, I was the one who suggested her to do both. We were dangerously close to losing our precious grandchild. You're going to end up in a cold jail cell, and you're going to reflect on what you've done. And with that, goodbye.
Don't be hasty, Lisa. The child needs a father. Let's not get divorced. Please, no police, he begged.
Our baby doesn't need a father who forces us out into the cold in the middle of the night.
I don't want to go to jail. Please, spare me.
Ignoring my husband's pleas, I went straight to the police station to file a report. After his release from the hospital, my husband was arrested and is awaiting his sentence. Given the severity of his actions, a heavy punishment is inevitable. He was, of course, fired from his job. After the divorce was finalized, I received a property settlement and compensation for his affair. He ended up penniless because of it. Of course, I also demanded $20,000 in compensation from his mistress. I heard her husband divorced her. Now I'm living back home at my parents' house with my son. Maybe it's because the irritable man at home is gone, but my son smiles a lot more these days. When we occasionally visit my mother-in-law, she's always delighted to see us. I will continue to raise my son with overflowing love to protect his precious smile.